Hello, and welcome to the pre-application workshop for applicants for the Light-Duty Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program that is funded by the VW Mitigation Trust. I am Minda Berbecco, and I will be leading you through this presentation today. I am joined by my colleagues Linda Huey, Ken Mack, and Itzal Guzman from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, who is serving as the administrator of this statewide program on behalf of the California Air Resources Board. The solicitation is now open and will close on August 18th at noon. Oh dear, so sorry. There we go. The focus of this webinar is to address specific questions, specific frequently asked questions that have come up from applicants. Some of you on this call may not be applicants, but rather are project beneficiaries. If you are a project beneficiary, we recommend that you do not attend this workshop, but rather go to the program website listed here and view one of the two previously recorded webinars. In those webinars, you will see discussions about the difference between the project beneficiary and the applicant, and more about expectations of the project beneficiary. Applicants, if you're here in this webinar right now, you're in the right place. This webinar is different than the previous two webinars, as it is intended to dig in and clarify some of the frequently asked questions and addenda that have come up throughout the solicitation process. As a reminder, the deadline to ask questions was July 1st. Based on some of the frequently asked questions that we've gotten throughout the open solicitation period, we'll be focusing on the following items: brief background and key terms, program goals, application process, what makes for a competitive solicitation, allowable match funding, and transferring ownership versus assigning contract obligations. A brief background for you is that the VW Environmental Mitigation Trust is a national program that provides funding for states to fully mitigate the excess NOx emissions caused by VW's use of illegal emissions testing defeat devices in certain VW diesel vehicles. For details on this background, please reference the program website and the two previous webinars. If you've attended our previous webinars, you've heard us use these terms: charging site, applicant and contractor, and project beneficiary. I'll briefly review the difference between applicant and project beneficiary here, but again, this is all on our website and has been discussed in the previous webinars. Here's an example of who would be an applicant and who would be a project beneficiary. All names of the companies are made up in this example. A company, Tilden EV, has experience installing 40 DC fast and 200 level 2 chargers across California at 10 locations owned by 5 different property owners since 2018. This company, if it meets the additional eligibility criteria, is an eligible applicant. They reach out to several small businesses across the state, including one local market named the City Feed and Supply that is interested in having chargers put into its parking lot. The parking lot is open to the public and the chargers are accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. City Feed and Supply, if they meet all of the eligibility criteria, is the project beneficiary. Tilden EV, as the applicant, gathers information from the project beneficiary, City Feed and Supply, for the application, including a letter of commitment. It is Tilden EV, as the applicant, who applies for this funding opportunity, not City Feed and Supply. We're not going to get into the eligibility now to preserve more time to discuss the issues outlined for this webinar, but this has been discussed in the previous two webinars and is outlined on the program website and in the solicitation. The program goals are to direct at least 50% of funds to disadvantaged and low-income communities, and expand EV charging access statewide and close geographic and capacity gaps in coverage. We are also trying to maximize the number of charging opportunities at the lowest cost. In other words, VW funds requested per kilowatt. The VW administrator seeks to award up to $5 million in trust funds to approximately 2 to 10 applicants through the solicitation. The maximum award to a single applicant is $4 million and the minimum is anticipated to be $500,000. Each applicant must include a proposal for the minimum number of each type of charger that you see here. And we've gotten some questions about this minimum expectation. So we just wanted to pause for a minute to answer a question about this minimum expectation. The intention is not to scare applicants away, but rather to encourage the most robust and fullest applications as possible. One of the goals of the program is to expand charging infrastructure statewide. So we want to encourage the most robust applications possible. We encourage you to include as many charging sites as possible and utilize the contingency list freely to include possible sites that have not yet been secured. If you think it could be a possibility, that's what the contingency list is for. Add it there. As part of this application, applicants will be asked to complete project lists. There's a template on our website that applicants should complete to submit their lists. I'm going to dig a little more into the application process for these lists here. There's a template for When you open the spreadsheet, the first tab has information about the applicant. This is very straightforward. Just fill this in. The next tab is for the priority list. Applicants can have up to $2.5 million worth of projects on this tab. These must be shovel ready. Please list out each charging site in the order of priority, with number 1 being the highest priority charging site. If a charging site has 2 types of chargers, for example, 20 level 2s and 5 DC fast, they should be separated into 2 lines. The charging sites with the same charger types will be compared and ranked against one another. I want to pause to repeat this last point. If you have a single charging site with 2 types of chargers, put these chargers on 2 separate lines. They will be evaluated separately. So going back to our example from earlier with our project beneficiary, City Feed and Supply, if Tilden EV as the applicant and the market as the project beneficiary are in agreement that 5 DC fast chargers and 10 level 2 chargers should go into the market's parking lot, then when Tilden EV puts that information into the Excel spreadsheet, it should go into 2 separate lines, even though it is the same project beneficiary. Same beneficiary, the market, but 2 types of chargers. The intention of reviewing on this level is to be able to compare apples to apples and rank the projects accordingly. The next tab is for the backup list. These are an additional 2.5 million projects that are of lower priority than the priority list. These projects should also be shovel ready. Applicants are not required to have a backup list, and if you do not plan on applying for more than $2.5 million, do not use this list. Again, list these charging sites in order of priority, with number 1 being the highest priority. The next tab is the contingency list. These projects do not need to be shovel ready. If your plan is to give a brief proposal instead of an actual list of potential projects, you can submit that proposal as a separate PDF. You do not need to enter anything here. However, we really do encourage you to think about any potential sites, even if they are not yet secured, and add them to this contingency list. We encourage applicants to submit the full $7.5 million using the 3 lists if they are able to. If you're an eligible applicant, you should go for it. The solicitation will close on August 18th at noon Pacific Daylight Time. I want to highlight that this is at noon, and this is an extension from our July date. We encourage applicants to get your application in early to ensure that you do not run into technical difficulties. And we see that many of you have already done this, so thank you for that. There will not be extensions due to technical glitches, so please plan ahead. If you haven't already started an account for the application, we encourage you to do so later today or tomorrow to make sure you do not have any technical issues or questions. In order to apply, the applicant will need the following items: a project narrative, which includes your team qualifications, ability to meet deadlines, previous awards, and project readiness; project lists, a template of which is available on our website; letters of commitment from project beneficiaries, an example of which is on our website; template agreement between project beneficiaries and the contractor. This is a template that you would use for all the beneficiaries. You just need one template. You do not need one for each individual project beneficiary. Project budget, including matching funds. The budget should show only eligible costs and be broken up by line item. Quotes for EV chargers and the applicant W-9. There is a video on the website with instructions on how to use the application system. You're encouraged to review it before you submit your application. And again, if you have trouble using the application website, please get in touch with the VW administrator through the email address, which will be posted at the end of this webinar. Now, we have gotten questions about the project narrative word count, so we wanted to briefly address that. Questions have included, do cover pages count towards word counts? Do image captions count towards word counts? So we want to state that yes, all of those things count towards word count. Please make your narrative as concise as possible to ensure that reviewers can gather the details they need to quickly evaluate your application. We want to be fair to you as an applicant who we know wants to share as much information about your application as possible, but also fair to all the other applicants who want a fast review to learn whether they've been awarded. So we do need to stick with our word count. Now we're going to discuss what makes a solicitation competitive. This has actually been a very common question, so we thought we would address it here. All applications will undergo an initial screening process for eligibility and completeness according to the criteria set forth in the solicitation guidance. We will be checking the eligibility of the applicants, the eligibility of the application, the eligibility of the project beneficiaries, and the eligibility of the projects themselves. This is intended to ensure that when we award the funds, that everything is ready to go and there won't be any holdups in the process. This is intended to be for your benefit. Once we review the eligibility, the reviewers will review the applications as follows. Priority lists will be reviewed first. Within those, charging sites in or adjacent to disadvantaged and/or low-income communities will be reviewed and prioritized for funding. We've gotten questions about whether applicants should have 50% of their sites in disadvantaged communities or if having more sites will make their application as a whole more competitive. We want to reiterate the process in which the review will happen, that charging sites will be evaluated individually and ranked against one another, not applications as a whole. Sites in disadvantaged communities or low-income communities on priority lists will be reviewed first. Charging sites will then be ranked based on the requested VW funds and the maximum power output at each site, where a lower amount of funds requested coupled with a higher potential output will be ranked more highly. Remember, charging sites with the same types of chargers will be ranked against one another. If the program is oversubscribed, after the review above, the VW administrator will prioritize charging sites located in counties with a higher need, which we will discuss in the next slide. For additional details on evaluation, please see the solicitation guidance document. So let me be clear about this. And again, this is all outlined in the solicitation itself. If you have a charging site, if you have charging sites on the priority list in or adjacent to disadvantaged and/or low-income communities, they will be reviewed first. If those sites request less VW funds and have higher maximum power output in kilowatts, they will be more competitive. If the program is oversubscribed and those sites also are in areas where there's a demonstrated need, which I'll discuss in a minute, then that makes them even more competitive. This is the evaluation criteria that the reviewers will use, and it is the one that is laid out in the solicitation. We received several questions as to what qualifies as demonstrated need or gap. Keep in mind that one of the goals of this program is to maximize charging opportunities. There could be a location with a station already there, but it's in use 90% of the time. If drivers need to wait or can't access the station as it's always in use, then this could potentially be a capacity gap. Another kind of gap is a geographic gap, as in there are no other charging stations at all within a given area. It is up to the applicant to first of all know their location well, what is already there, and whether a station is appropriate for that location. Second, they need to include this information briefly in the narrative to make it clear how a station in this location would fill a gap. We've gotten questions about allowable match funding and co-funding, so we want to take a moment to discuss this. We had to do some investigation ourselves, and there have been some updates that have come out in addenda. For the purpose of the solicitation, we use the terms match funding and co-funding interchangeably. Funds that are not VW trust funds and that are applied towards eligible costs can be considered as match or co-funding. In your budget, show all sources of funding broken up by line item and shown and showing only eligible costs. The following sources of funds are not allowable as match. Funding from SB 350, California Energy Commission, and Electrify America programs. Some questions have come up about SCE's Charge Ready program. This is an allowable match. In addition, Carl Moyer funding is also allowable. Last, although contractors and project beneficiaries cannot use low carbon fuel standard credits as match or co-funding, they may earn credits by the chargers funded through this program. Please note that we have clarifying language in the addenda posted on the website regarding co-funding, so please review the two addenda posted on the program website. Now, we've gotten several questions about transferring ownership versus assigning contract obligations. What is the difference, and what are you permitted as an applicant to do? So we wanted to pause to dig in a little bit more on that. We've been asked by some potential applicants if they can immediately transfer ownership of the stations to each of the project beneficiaries. So going back to our example from earlier, if Tilden EV as a contractor had 10 stations at 3 different markets after applying and getting funds, could Tilden EV then transfer the ownership to each of the project beneficiaries, thereby no longer being responsible for the projects? The answer is that they can transfer the ownership, but Tilden EV is still responsible for all the obligations in the contract with the VW program. The VW administrator will not be writing individual contracts with each of the markets. There will still only be one contract between the VW administrator and the contractor. If you apply as an applicant, you are responsible. A slightly different question came up as to whether a contractor could assign the entire contract for all the station's maintenance, etc., to another company. This would most likely only occur if a contractor was going out of business. This is not preferred, and any action in that regard would need to be reviewed by the VW administrator. Please don't plan on this approach. Remember, you are being selected as an applicant for funding because you have all the qualifications, you have the experience, you have the background, you have the good projects that have been ranked more highly than the other projects. It is the intention of the VW administrators to contract with you. Let's now quickly go over the tentative timeline for this program. The solicitation is now open and it will close on August 18th. This is a competitive solicitation. Applications will not be looked at until the solicitation closes. Evaluation will happen shortly thereafter, and the notice to proceed will follow. Contracting will then happen at the end of 2021. Project implementation will follow starting in 2022 and with a 3-year operations annual reporting to follow that the contractor is responsible for. To stay up to date and receive alerts about this program, please fill out the SurveyMonkey form listed here. You can also review relevant information associated with the program on our website. If you have trouble with the application system, please reach out by email to the email addresses listed here. Remember that questions are now closed for the solicitation. I'm going to leave this up for just a minute so people can jot this information down. Once again, we'd like to thank you for attending the VW Mitigation Trust webinar on light-duty electric vehicle infrastructure. We look forward to seeing your applications.